What? Juliet?
Don't know how to say it exactly.
Zombies! Zombies! Coming to kill us now!
I'm a zombie hunter.
What? Ah! Ah! Oh, fuck!
Lollipop Chainsaw is a strange but awesome collaboration between video game director Suda51 with his studio Grasshopper Manufacture and film director/writer James Gunn, James apparently helping out with the characters and writing for the game. That's worth noting off the bat, as the box art and marketing heavily promoted James Gunn as a unique selling point. Considering this released in 2012, when the work he would have been best known for consisted of being the writer for the Dawn of the Dead remake and Scooby-Doo live-action movie, and directing the films Slither and Super, I can't say I would have been very interested in a random Hollywood guy coming in and being given the helm of lead writer for a video game, but if he is responsible for the majority of the dialogue and humor, I have to say, okay, wow, I get it, it was worth it, nice work. Mostly, anyway. While the gameplay itself is endearing and decent in its own right, especially the many change-of-pace minigames, the star of the show for Lollipop Chainsaw, for me, was the humor, most of it anyway, and the presentation as a whole, both the audio and visual design of course, but also the style and character that surrounds all aspects of the experience of Lollipop Chainsaw. Immediately the game sets the mood and welcomes you into its world. The introduction video gives us an overview of our main character, Juliet, while a cheesy teen romance B-movie intro song plays in the background.
These are my girls on the San Romero cheer squad. We've gone to the Nationals 3 years in a row, but we haven't won yet. Ugh.
She talks about her family, her hobbies, her love for lollipops, and her boyfriend Nick. She also mentions it's her 18th birthday today. Wow, how convenient for this heavily sexualized game. It ends with her rushing out the door to go meet up with Nick, who is currently getting surrounded by zombies. Right after, we're taken to this adorable comic-themed menu screen, showing Juliet riding her bike in a low frame rate cartoon on the side, all while Cherry Bomb by the Runaways plays in the background. The vibe is set, holy shit. Both the intro video and the menu screen got me seriously invested in whatever this game was going to throw at me next. I was already hooked. After a brief prologue level, introducing the basic mechanics and letting you chainsaw zombies and rescue some classmates, we find Nick, Juliet's boyfriend, turned into a zombie. But wait, no, it's not Nick. He comes in to save the day, when he really didn't need to, of course, and gets bitten in the process. This is where the natural-sounding dialogue first surprised me. I was expecting just a cringe fest, but no, it's competent enough to sound natural and kind of funny.
Fuck. I'm screwing up your birthday, aren't I? I'm sorry, Juliet. I don't want to fuck up your birthday.
Finally, we settle into the main game with the premise being set in stone at last. Juliet is to hunt down zombies while her disembodied boyfriend's head tags along attached to her hip. Fantastic.
Don't hate me!
While the graphics themselves, the environments and character models aren't super impressive, it feels very early 2010s with its chunkiness and Unreal Engine texture pop-in issues, all that is basically to be expected. What I wasn't expecting was the sheer amount of screen tearing, which was doubly noticeable when editing. It's insane, it happens all the time, and of course there's no graphical options for this 2012 PlayStation 3 game like VSync or anything. For cutscenes it was hard to ignore, as was the strange issue with the blur effect, where they tried to outline the character model but weren't able to or something. It looks terrible. Jesus, the technical problems with the visuals, at least with the PS3 version, were fucking awful. Besides all of that, the part about the visuals that I fell in love with was basically everything else. The colors used in-game already evoke that comic book feel, with the contrast between the blocks of color and line art, but the HUD is what really caught my eye, with its heavy black ink borders and classic Ben-Day dots. Those are also present on the outer edges of the screen when simply walking around, but what's more, they even appear on the wheel when you're targeting an enemy too. Amazing. The load screens have a similar feel to it, with hints passing by at the top, the little still images dancing between their anchor points all paper-like, and the level select screen goes even harder. The pause menu and some of the cutscenes match that style as well. The shop menu is themed as a website where Juliet likes to spend her money, the passive upgrades being appropriately gimmicked to match the stat that's being increased, and the song Lollipop by the Chordettes plays as you browse. Lollipops are your healing item, and they're what makes up your health bar at the top left of the screen. Finishing a combo results in a bright pink heart splash effect. Recently disarmed zombies will squirt out pink magic juice, and when defeated, they sort of phase out of existence in a colorful Ben-Day dot dissolve fashion. Their heads fall to the ground with a pink streak, you might even get a star popping out which fills up your star soul meter at the bottom left, and killing a zombie with certain button mashing prompt moves causes a rainbow to form overhead. Fuck man, the level of dedication to this mashup between comic book and cutesy girly style is incredible. Juliet even does a school cheer when you kill a tougher named zombie. The idea of the comic book introduction to each character is great, but it goes away way too quickly. It's on screen for so little of a time, it almost feels like a joke in and of itself, like, oh, here's a bunch of text, okay, now it's gone, but I don't think that's what's going on. There isn't enough text on screen to really sell me on that bit. They probably should have just had the info screen hang there a tad longer so you could actually read a few of these jokes. The combat in Lollipop Chainsaw is very much geared towards you finishing zombies off by decapitating them with your chainsaw, and when you get 3 or more lobotomies in one swing, the screen shifts into sparkle hunting vision, where the background becomes a sea of twinkling stars. The colors change the more heads you chop off in one motion, for instance turning a reddish flavor when netting 5. You can trigger these a bit easier when in Star Soul mode, pressing R2 when your meter at the bottom left is all the way up, as every chainsaw swing is then a one-hit kill. Even better, every time you activate it, Hey Mickey by Tony Basil plays as you hunt for head slices. Just perfect. The song that plays when you're in the first real level in the halls of the school also won me over immediately, Riot Rhythm by Sleigh Bells. It feels very girl power with its vocals, the clapping and stomping matching the atmosphere of a high school pep rally, and the song itself has a great beat and overall hits me in a way that gets me pumped for goofy zombie killing mayhem. Now, as awesome as all of that is, I have to say, most of the soundtrack kind of let me down. At one point, in the mediocre farm level, the worst in the game for reasons I'll get to, you drive a tractor and mow down zombies in a minigame, and they play Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Round, like a record, and it was absolutely perfect. However, the vast majority of the music selection is metal and hard rock stuff, the genres that already spring to mind immediately when thinking of a zombie-slaying bloodfest. It's too easy, too safe. The appeal of all of this, for me, is the clashing of worlds. A cheerleader being goofy and bubbly while chopping off zombie heads is awesome, and I think it makes more sense to carry the sound design with her instead of matching it to the environment. In a way that does happen from time to time, like with Hey Mickey showing up now and again, almost like her personality is breaking through the rough and gruff setting, but the ratio is completely out of whack. Hey Mickey's 5% to the punk rock and death metal music's 95% isn't a good balance in my opinion. I can respect the thought and effort that was likely put into getting this licensed soundtrack together. They surely wanted certain areas and set pieces to give off a set mood. For instance, the music for each level matches the style of the end boss to the area, which is something that sounds good on paper, but man, the clashing of girly girl or ironic 80s music with this setting was so perfect, everything that isn't that feels jarringly inferior. There's a My Best Music option in the menu where you can pick your 5 favorite tracks and have that playlist keep looping as your backing beats, but it's just not the same. There's only a handful of songs that really caught my ears in the right way, and where they're currently placed is perfect as is. It would strip them of their charm if they just played all the time. Cherry Bomb as the title screen, Lollipop as the shop theme, and Hey Mickey for Star Soul mode and Nick Tickets are all contextually and thematically sound where they are, so choosing any of those just so I don't have to be subjected to the many, many boring and generic songs Grasshopper came up with, or the licensed metal songs from other bands? Don't get me wrong, I still love the vibe for the most part, but nothing tops the opening of the high school level, in that hallway, where the song you were meant to hear was awesome, then you got the shop music, and then the Star Soul song whenever you'd activate that. Oh man, incredible. The humor and dialogue of the game is the same level of mixed bag, with the highs being oh so high, and the lows being pretty pathetic and lame. The chemistry between Nick and Juliet feels and sounds very genuine for most of the game, maybe a line here and there that didn't work, but far more than not, their banter was believable, funny, and honestly adorable.
He's my sensei.
A sensei? Like a teacher?
I didn't know you What's your favorite color, Nick?
Blue? No, green.
Awesome. I love learning about you.
I fucked up. It's yellow. What else have you killed?
Leprechauns. I killed a whole tribe of Frankenberries once.
Frankenberry? From like the cereal?
That is total propaganda to get you to trust them. Wow, Rosalind must have seen this on my Amazon wish list. Nick, I can shoot your head with this.
What?
They get a lot of mileage out of Nick being a disembodied head, both for the written dialogue and in terms of gameplay. I'll get to the latter a bit later on, but there's plenty of voice lines that joke about his current accessory status.
I'm like the only girl with a decapitated head for a boyfriend.
I don't want to be a fashion accessory, Juliet. This is my life. Is that rain? God, I'm happy I don't have a bladder. Otherwise I'd be pissing myself right now.
Check out this new trick, Nick. It's called the Chainsaw Dash.
Wait, stop! It makes me dizzy.
Another big jump. Hold on to click your teeth, Nick.
Okay.
Ow, you bit my butt.
Sorry. I always appreciated your rock hard butt, Juliet, but it's kind of hurting the back of my skull.
What makes these character interactions all the better is that they seem sincere, instead of just being goofy and dumb for the sake of it. There are some moments where there's a purposeful clash, like Juliet going from being sad about the helicopter pilot likely being dead into answering her phone. However, as an example of the opposite, when Juliet's sensei dies in front of her, she's sad, then he comically pops up to give her a gift before dying for real, and she could have went along with that ooh a gift mindset immediately, but she remains sad about her master dying. Playing the straight man, as it's called, is important depending on the joke to show the contrast between normal and silly demeanor. Nick himself is really the glue holding everything together though, the ultimate straight man. Yeah, he has his jokes, but considering how unusual Juliet's family is, and that they're basically the only other characters in the game, he helps ground things anytime he speaks up.
The whole no body thing is cool. I wouldn't have to worry about gaining weight. Food would just fall out of my neck.
OMG! Then I wouldn't be as gross and fat as I am now.
I don't want chewed food falling out of my neck. That's disgusting.
His interactions with Juliet's dad were some of my favorites.
Excuse me.
Boy, you be careful now about where you're touching my daughter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I love the I want to impress your intimidating father shtick when done well, and I'd say this hits the mark.
But whatever dude Juliet ends up with is gonna be part of the family business. What are you gonna do? Throw magic stars at chupacabras with your tongue?
Maybe, Dad. Nick's tongue is very limber.
And how do you know that?
She doesn't. She doesn't know that at all, sir. She has no idea if my tongue is limber.
I also particularly like when Juliet breaks the news of Nick's bodiless status back in the beginning of the game. If this were made now, I could so easily see Nick pulling a Morty and going, Juliet, for an uncomfortable amount of time and all that, but no, he freaks out in the beginning, which is what you'd expect, then he asks humor-laden questions, which are still valid and reasonable things to ask, but then immediately asks the question that I was thinking he'd skip right over in favor of more jokey jokes.
Juliet? How do you know how to perform a magical ritual on my decapitated head?
Even the look behind you gag was done in a way that didn't feel annoying. Now, all that being said, there are some characters and jokes that fucking sucked. Rosalind, as a character, is awful. She's Juliet's little sister, and I don't know, maybe this is how the young teens talked in 2012, but every single sentence out of her mouth was cringe-inducing.
Rosalind, this is Nick. Wow, it's cool. What does the bottom of it look like? Can you see the spine sticking out? Yuck. Awesome. It makes me throw up.
Yeah. Nice meeting you, too.
Ah, it talks. Ah, it scares me, and I love it.
By far the worst lines in the game all came from her. I really wish she was just outright cut from the game.
Shit muffins! I can't get it to stop! Ah!
The farm level features her front to back, which is a big part of why that's my least favorite level in the game.
Wait, no! Ah! Why? This is awful, but hilarious!
The other being the plot of that stage. I mean, oh, she's driving a runaway bus, and you have to keep chasing the bus the whole level? Just terrible. You'll also be shooting rocks a lot. Yep, shooting rocks. My other main annoyance with the humor is the totally random sounding lines the zombies would say before an ambush. At first, when I hadn't heard them so frequently, it was kind of chuckle-worthy in a catch-you-off-guard sort of way.
We gotta live in a maze.
Eggs. What a crazy zombie. And sometimes they made sense, like the teacher leaping out the window out of nowhere telling us to stop talking and to study. And the football guys saying football things.
I'm gonna fist my ass with your head.
And the baseball guys saying baseball things? Yeah. The gross out say inappropriate things shock humor gets old pretty fast, and it gets so much worse than this. I'll never forget the I have hemorrhoids guy. He then says this after you kill him. I'd say this is an aspect of the game that didn't age well, as with its frequent use of the R slur that I won't say in this video for fear of being cancelled forever, but honestly, was the random butt-fuck comedy actually that funny back then in the first place? Maybe if you're 15, but if you're an adult, I just don't know. The students say random stuff sometimes after you rescue them, and those are kind of lame too.
Don't worry about the smell. I just shit myself. I think those zombies were trying to bukkake me. My favorite president is Warren G. Harding.
I need another tampon.
If this is a part of what James Gunn brings to the table, it kind of sucks, to be honest. Then again, in No More Heroes, they make you jerk off to gain your battery back, so maybe Suda51 and James Gunn are simply a match made in heaven. The last bit of humor that felt off for me was with the sensei character. I mean, I'm not about to get offended on behalf of a culture, but the old pervy Japanese stereotype is pretty pathetic and boring in my opinion. Grasshopper Studios is a Japanese developer, so I don't know if this was James Gunn or Suda inspired, but I don't really care, to be honest. It's a trope so played out that it pulls me out of whatever media I'm trying to enjoy the moment it shows up. I'll admit that the visual of him squatting down staring at Nick, therefore staring directly at Juliet's ass while she's bent over, is absolutely hilarious, but it would have been just as humorous without the obvious sexualization. It gets worse though, as Juliet is only eye candy for the player today. She's just now 18. Phew, just in time, right fellas? But that means this pervert is more than just a pervert. He was into the idea of her panties with teddy bears on them since she was a minor.
I'm glad I just so happened to wear my zombie fighting underwear today.
What?
Sensei Morikawa said wearing cotton underwear with little teddy bears or hearts is best for doing battle. He'd make me wear them to every class.
I'm so creeped out right now.
Like, fuck off with all this. It would have been far, far funnier if they subverted that tired and worn out trope, having him be entirely non-sexual and strictly business, or, I don't know, have him be secretly in love with her mom or something. Just, it's bad. I don't especially mind the sexual tone the game has overall. I mean, it is a bit wild how similar it is to Bayonetta, with the overtly sexy main character who has a love for lollipops, both using those as a healing item, and both being action games, but I don't know, maybe it really was just a coincidence. Although my thoughts have changed a bit since my initial Dead Rising video, even with my previous frame of mind, I don't think I'd be that bothered with the sexualization in Lollipop Chainsaw. She's her own person, she's a badass who saves the world, she has a genuine character and isn't just a vehicle for ass and cleavage shots. Mostly anyway. She even blocks your view if you try to pan the camera down and get a look up her skirt, which is a nice payoff given that the loading screen tells you not to do it, Juliet tells the grounded zombies, and the player indirectly, not to do it, and the tutorial message tells you not to be a perv and abuse the right control stick. There's even an achievement for keeping the camera angled down for a long enough time, which to me doesn't seem like a pat on the back, but rather a permanent memento of shame that your friends and anyone else who looks at your trophies can make fun of you for. That said, when she bends over and slices trees or whatever with the chainsaw QTE, you can see up her skirt sometimes, and I do think that's kind of lame, as other times the prompt seems to purposely get in the way, which is a far funnier visual. I think the pole dancing minigame is encroaching on being unnecessary and too much, especially since it's so rudimentary gameplay-wise, but beyond that, I don't know, I just don't see it, the whole sexism thing. I actually think games like Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and Metal Gear Solid are worse, since in those, the sexualized outfits don't really serve a purpose other than being gratifying for the player. In Lollipop Chainsaw, the main character is a fucking cheerleader, it's used as a vehicle for jokes the whole way through, even if some of them aren't very funny, and it's a batshit ridiculous game start to finish. The premise alone of mixing over-the-top, almost stupidly sexualized girly girl stuff and zombie slang is worth it in and of itself, it's a great gimmick. I also kind of dig how obviously into Juliet Nick is. You could argue his compliments about her body and attractiveness are a stand-in for what the typical male gamer is thinking, but I don't see it that way. Besides Nick having his own personality and being given a small semi-arc of his own, which I'll talk about later, like I've shown before, these two seem to really like each other, and while Nick might talk about how much he wishes he still had a penis when Juliet changes into a new outfit,
oh man, I wish I had a penis.
Juliet brings up how hot and awesome she thinks Nick is almost as often.
God, Nick, that was so hot. God, you're hot. I adore you.
It's wholesome in a way. Something else I liked, Juliet talks about being too fat and having a ginormous butt and all that quite often, but Nick doesn't do the boring, doting boyfriend thing of correcting and complimenting her every time. He only does it once from what I can tell.
Does my butt look less ginormous when I'm all pink like this?
Your butt never looks ginormous, Juliet.
However, I mean, all that being said, it would have been nice if she wasn't a minor up until 12 hours ago. She's 18 today, it's legal, yeah, but it is a bit on the nose and a tad creepy. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old. That's all I have for the obligatory sex talk. We can move on now. When it comes to the gameplay, there's a lot of fun stuff to discuss. The combat is the meat of the game, and it's nice that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Sure, you get graded based on your performance at the end of each level, much like more serious action games, and is even themed as a report card, awesomely enough. And there are rewards for beating your dad's high score, and difficulty options that make the combat much more challenging, but the gameplay itself isn't near as deep or complex as something like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta and their ilk. The best way to increase your score is by sparkle hunting, which is what I talked about earlier, slicing off 3 or more zombie heads at once. That has its own category in the report card, and nets you a lot of zombie medals to spend in the shop, the medals also being a scoring category. This means it's ideal in more ways than one to simply group up a gaggle of enemies, use your pom-pom light attacks to groggy them, then finish them all off with some chainsaw swings. Whereas other score-heavy action games penalize you for doing the same combos over and over, that's not really the case here at all. Just do what works best, and most often that means stunning the zombies and chopping off their heads. Sparkle hunting is the name of the game. I mean, it's not, but you get it. That's where the real money and higher rankings are found, so focusing your offense in that direction is all you really ever have to do. You do have 3 methods of attack, pom-pom fast strikes, then your lower and upper chainsaw swings. Some enemies will be without legs, crawling around, which obviously encourages the grounded chainsaw attacks, but beyond those, the combos I stuck to were the ones that related to the pom-pom and upper chainsaw slashes. All this is to say, while the hack-and-slash nature of the offense is engaging and enjoyable, even when you up the difficulty and try for better scores, you're not expected to be an expert like a few other action games out there. That said, when giving it a go on hardest, some of the cracks I observed earlier began to widen, specifically when it comes to the button layout and the priority levels for dodging. Dodge is the right face button, circle on PS3, B on 360, and all your offensive strikes comprise the other 3 face buttons. I'd say the ideal is to have the defensive move be mapped to one of the shoulder buttons, so you can press it at any time without the worry of sluggishly transitioning your thumb from an attack button over to the dodge. However, with Lollipop Chainsaw, it wouldn't make a ton of difference. You can't interrupt an animation with the dodge, so if you're accustomed to games like Bayonetta, for instance, you'll likely get smacked in the face a lot in the beginning. Certain attacks feel like they have longer delays after them, which makes mistaken combo inputs a little less forgiving. I don't think this is a glaring flaw of the game or anything. It's simple enough to skate by with the sparkle hunting strategy on normal and hard settings. I do think there was room for a standard jump button, since dodging into an attack for mid-air stuff is a bit awkward, but it isn't a big deal. It's also super weird that the game keeps telling you to do homing attacks, but all they're trying to say is to use your pom-pom strikes to make the enemies groggy. I mean, I get what they're saying now. The pom-pom strikes will home onto, or glide Juliet towards the enemies nearby, or ones you're aiming at, but homing attack definitely sounds like a ranged thing, and Cordelia randomly calling you, saying that you suck, and to do homing attacks more, felt like I was being gaslit about my character's offensive moves. Just poor wording on their part. The Holy Chainsaw combo is unquestionably the best attack in the game, which I used often once I bought it, along with the increasing chainsaw heavy attack combo, but I also found the butt strike to be useful, since it groggy zombies on contact. If you miss, you'll be vulnerable, so it balances out. The instant groggy state definitely comes in handy with tougher named zombies on higher difficulties, but with hordes, it's a pretty risky gambit. The zombies receiving a boost of HP isn't the only difference with the higher difficulties, thankfully. You go from being able to hold 5 lollipops on normal, to 3 on hard, and only 1 on hardest. The zombies are more aggressive with their attack frequency, leading to your combos being interrupted a whole lot more if you're bad, and a handful of unique named zombies, the ones with the health bar, show up when on hard difficulty or higher. The named zombies you've already seen will have a check mark, so it's pretty clear which ones are difficulty exclusive. While the shop system is nice to see, I vastly prefer this method of unlocking moves opposed to skill trees. There's a pretty glaring flaw. You can't see what the combo is before spending your money on it. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if you're going to play the game more than once anyway, but why do this? It's also a shame there isn't a testing space, since yes, there are many combos, but the game is broken up by so many non-combat sections that you might forget you had some moves to try out by the next time you get to an enemy, or you might be encouraged to fight a certain way. For example, when I bought the butt attack, there were 2 zombies right there for me to use it on, but right afterwards, I bounced on zombie heads, bounced on a trampoline, did a headless blue body Nick Cheer quicktime event, protected Rosalind's stupid boss from incoming zombies with the chainsaw blaster, then did it again when the zombies went for the goddamn rocks. Frickin' rocks, man. Still no enemies to melee attack yet, so I then slice into the mushroom, have a trip, and then I fight giant chickens. Although I managed to whip it out when trying out the higher difficulties, I basically forgot about the butt attack after this thanks to the giant window of time where I couldn't try it out. While the many cosmetics are fun to unlock, it would have been nice if there were 2 you could buy every new mission instead of 1 per level, and like 10 being available to purchase when you beat the game. Since you can't change your outfit in the middle of a stage, maybe it doesn't matter all that much in the end. My favorite item in the shop, besides the best combo attack of course, has to be the Nick ticket. You can find these around here and there in some areas, but you'll mostly have to buy them if you want to keep a stock of them on hand. As you progress through the game, you're given more and more uses for Nick, and using a Nick ticket will activate the roulette. Stop it on something you want and have a blast. No, like literally, shoot his head out of a gun, or kick his head like a soccer ball, I think, whip his head around like a something, and finally, Nick Shake, the ultimate move. Prance around and collect a shower of lollipops and zombie medals to spend at the shop. You can't exploit this, by the way. After using it once, the option goes away on the next roulette spin. Still, may as well use it if you see a shop up ahead and it's available. A pretty common goal, out of the many the game will throw at you at a blistering pace, is rescuing a classmate. These are exactly how they sound. You kill the zombies trying to attack the student and hope they don't die. If you succeed, you get money, which is great, and if you fail, they turn into a harder zombie variant, which is cool in its own way. A fun consequence to failure. However, something that's kind of wild is the hidden consequence to failure. There's 2 endings to the game, good ending and bad ending, and the good ending can only be achieved if you keep all your classmates alive throughout all the levels in the game. Even letting 1 die nets you the bad ending. How very video gamey of you, Grasshopper. Nice work. That should come as no surprise with Lollipop Chainsaw, though, as this is the most video gamey video game you'll ever see. I can't make that promise, but for real, this is probably what out-of-touch old people think. Take, oh, I don't know, any of the US politicians and show them this game, and they'd be like, yep, that's exactly what I pictured Nintendo games look like. We have to outlaw them to save our children, and some shit. As a ridiculous contrast to their philosophy with No More Heroes, it feels like Grasshopper Manufacture is desperate for you to never get bored when playing Lollipop Chainsaw. Seriously, they're terrified of the prospect. You barely get so much as 1 minute alone to your thoughts before a camera cut to the arrow you're supposed to follow, an explosion, chainsawing down a door and kicking it open, a bus crashing in front of you, a quicktime event, a minigame, defend the point of interest from zombies, now run out of the room before the timer hits 0, get some air off sick jumps with your chainsaw dash, slow it down with some, by comparison, mundane sparkle hunting combat, now cheer on Nick as he does the hustle as a blue glowy zombie. Oh, how about a basketball minigame where you chop zombies' heads off into the hoop? How about some third-person shooting with your new gun? Baseball minigame? Sign me up. Now drive around and run zombies over with a tractor. Fight off some chickens? Play Pac-Man with giant keys. Now Breakout, a side-scrolling 2D segment. Shooty Space Invaders, now a gondola section. There's a lot here. A lot. Personally, I appreciated all this as it came to me. Minigames and gimmicks and quicktime events in a video game as non-serious as this feel really appropriate, and it also helps that I'm super into this type of stuff in the first place. Any excuse to break into QTEs is fine by me. I think these are especially interesting when thinking back on No More Heroes. That title had plenty of minigames that were almost entirely divorced from the core gameplay as well, but they were presented as being dull on purpose, almost boring. This isn't what you came for, these are literal chores, they aren't fun to do, that's the joke. A sort of meta-commentary on gaming as a whole. Conversely, in Lollipop Chainsaw, these mechanically similar breaks from the combat are snappy, the characters have fun doing them, and their visuals and audio make them feel like a reward rather than a punishment. Not all of them are equally enjoyable, but either way, having them naturally slide into this linear game, along with their length being cut down significantly, spruces up the pacing quite a lot, always making it feel like the game is moving forward.
If it bleeds, I can kill it.
Besides the fact that failing one, either on purpose or not, because you didn't want to do it yet since you were trying to grab coins behind it, anyway, besides the fact that failing one counts as a death on your scorecard at the end of the level, the headless body sections were a delight. Having Juliet actually be a cheerleader for a bit while Nick waddles and learns how to walk is adorable. Bouncing off zombie heads felt similar mechanically, but not as much pizzazz with its presentation. There's also jumping off a vault or a trampoline, and these feel the worst out of all the simple minigames. They're boring, they don't look interesting, and they feel floaty and weird. The pole dancing doesn't have a lot going on with it, feels almost like an afterthought to be honest. Chainsaw dashing as a way to provide a slice of speedy racing gameplay is enjoyable for what it is, and the ramps being colorful and absurd fits in quite nicely. The basketball minigame is used twice, and the way it ramps up is interesting enough to warrant me not being annoyed by its reuse. The first and second iterations have the same goal, but the second time they throw in beefier, harder variants that goaltend all your shots and are harder to kill. This forces you to take them out of the action, such as drop-kicking them out of bounds to free up the basket. Decapitations from the three-point line count as 3 points, by the way. Oh man, I love basketball. The baseball minigame wasn't quite as cool. You have to defend Nick as he runs the bases 3 times, using your chainsaw blaster to shoot the charging enemies. Not as fun as going for a home run or trying to strike out a zombie as a pitcher or something. I mean, even No More Heroes had a better baseball minigame than this, and that lasted like 4 seconds. There's 2 iterations of riding a tractor, but the second one just has obstacles to avoid, which isn't all that exciting. Still a great song, though. The Pac-Man stuff was... it was alright, I guess, as was the 2D side-scroller gimmick and the disco breakout combat section, but oh my god, the bullshit minigame where you have to scale a virtual building with the window cleaning elevator thing is awful. You ascend so slow, have to avoid dumb obstacles, shoot at the incoming stuff, and yeah, failing this counts against you as a death. Oh boy, I hated this section. Out of all the pacing change-ups, the worst by far are the telephone calls. These are presented early as if it'll be akin to answering the codec in a Metal Gear Solid game, but no, when someone calls, either it'll go to voicemail, or Juliet will answer it on her own. You don't have a say, either it'll ring and jump to dialogue, or it'll ring and go unanswered for some reason. Already super weird, but if I'm being honest, I wish she'd never pick up the phone. These calls are fucking terrible. They're maybe 3 sentences, and offer nothing of value. They're utterly pointless. I've listened to all of them front to back in my free time, and the only thing that made it worth it for me was being able to complain about it in this video. Seriously, remove these from the game entirely. They don't improve the pacing, they hurt it. They're awful. The enemies are all different gimmicked zombies, and most serve their purpose and feel good to fight, but there are 3 types that I specifically dislike. The policeman zombies, flying boys, and dynamite dicks. The flyer basically forces you to use your gun, and the auto-aiming as you pull it out is finicky and frustrating. The dynamite carriers are simply aggravating. Oh, they blow up after a while. Okay. Oh, they blow up after they touch a fire zombie. Okay. The section where you have to keep them at bay as you chainsaw into the support poles isn't much fun, and I don't know why you vertically slice into them, since they're vertical pole... Really weird. The policeman zombies just straight up suck. They're annoying to approach since they fire and stun lock you, but once when I was walking around a corner they started blasting and I died almost immediately. The boss fights are all okay. Nothing terribly interesting or awful about any of them, but I'll mention a few things about every one. One of Zed's gimmicks is that he spits out gigantic letters and words at you, and Nick's reaction to them, hating the very idea of giant letters, just really won me over.
No one told me we're gonna have to deal with giant letters. No one told me we're gonna have to deal with giant letters. Fuck! Giant letters.
The destroy the speakers in one of the later phases is pretty tedious though, where he keeps jumping away. The movement and combos in this game feel designed around enemies who close the distance on you, so going out of your way to slowly jog over and attack an object repeatedly is a pretty unsatisfying time. Some of the jokes in this boss fight felt a little try-hard, especially coming from Nick with Green Day references and the like, but nothing was as bad as the boss introduction. This character intro screen sits there for a while longer than other ones, probably so you can read his influences, but it's still not on screen long enough for my liking. Juliet breaks the fourth wall and reacts to him torturing small animals, and her dialogue just doesn't land for me.
Torturing small animals? What kind of whack job waterboards Chip and Dale? That makes Skyliner here like the most uncoolest dude ever!
I think it would have been funnier for her to break the fourth wall again, it's the only time it happens, so it's fine, and say something more along the lines of, dude, that's some serial killer shit, you gotta see somebody about that. Everything being goofy up to this point, but then getting serious about this clear serial killer warning sign would have been hilarious. Then again, maybe I'm not as funny as I think I am. The Vicky fight... Oh shit, sorry, I got nothing on this guy, I'm indifferent to him, he's fine. Shooting his big fat head was fun. Then again, since he's Viking themed, he's likely the reason the entirety of the music in this level sounds like boring metal garbage, so maybe I don't like him after all. Mariska is a boss I enjoyed quite a lot, even though the level she's in is my least favorite of the bunch. I know I've said it a few times now, but fuck the farm level. I hate Rosalind so much, and the environment you're wandering through is painfully boring. Slicing down mushrooms, having psychedelic trips, fighting off chickens, and listening to Spin Me Right Round, like a record, is great though, but it doesn't make up for having to put up with Rosalind and the mystery of the runaway bus. Plus, I had a ton of audio issues in this stage, where Nick and Juliet would say the same lines over and over again, sometimes overlapping each other.
Cheated your rock hard butt, Juliet, but it's kind of hurting the back of my skull. This place is freaking me out.
I know you're just
My
being
heart
ironic
is
because
beating
of my
a million
ginormous
miles an
ass.
hour.
Also, you shoot rocks a lot. Yep, rocks. Mariska is cool though, she's a Grateful Dead groupie, clearly, and doubles herself, floating in bubbles for you to shoot, and the tractor even makes a comeback as she tries to run you down. Something that goes for all the boss fights is how the multiple phases are broken up. You perform a sweet-ass QuickTime event where you'll need to angle your control stick in a certain way and mash the triangle button. Blood splatters all around, and the vibration of the controller takes it over the top. It's visceral, feels, and looks great, and you do it multiple times a fight, since they seem to always put themselves back together at least once. Rad as hell. Something else neat about the theming for the farm level is the loading screen. It's a trippy, psychedelic color morphing thing, but if you look closely, you can see ominous eyes staring back at you. Maybe Mariska's? Likely. The arcade and disco theme for the next level was a fun combo, but like I've said, the scaffolding building climb thing was so dreadful it left a bad taste in my mouth for this stage. Josie isn't horrible, the colors are nice, like the stairs and such, and there's this recurring joke where Juliet thinks Josie's auto-tuning means he's making fun of Stephen Hawking.
Who is this?
The one you ain't gonna level up on.
Why are you pretending to be Stephen Hawking? Give us Rosalind now. And quit making fun of Stephen Hawking. He's a great man, you perv.
Kinda great. I do wish she would have kept this up until the very end. Before she kills him, she calls him Weird Voice Guy.
You're out of coins, weird voice guy.
His reaction to Juliet's dad saving Rosalind, and therefore him no longer having any leverage, was kinda funny. The next stage is the penultimate level, and it, sadly, features Rosalind in it quite often.
Hey, Juliet, look what I found!
She has a wrecking ball. Wow, she's so random and great.
This is awful, but hilarious!
Jesus. At least here we see a little more of Juliet's other sister, Cordelia, as she helps out in a few sections with her sniper rifle. Nothing amazing or anything, but I'll take it over Rosalind. There's a gondola bit where you have to make sure it doesn't exceed the weight limit, but it doesn't matter in the end since you fall off even when you succeed, so it's like, oh, alright I guess. Lewis is a decent boss, but my favorite parts about him are a little more secondary than others. The visual of Juliet and him clashing in the intro cutscene looks awesome, and in this fight you get to do the Chainsaw QuickTime event more than 3 times, and I like that. It is a solid boss, a great finale. However, the game isn't over. The last level has you doing a bunch of chainsaw dashing, then you fight Killabilly. Yeah, this one is pretty rough, but at least you get to chop off his fingers. Giant bosses are pretty hit or miss in video games, and this one is a miss for me, dog. The story of the game is pretty simple, which works in its favor to some extent, but the main villain is such a pathetic joke, it actually wraps back around from being ironically funny to just being stupid. Basically, it's my birthday, gotta meet with Nick, oh no, zombies, these undead douchebags, yada yada, Nick gets bitten, he's now my bodiless boyfriend fashion statement, I have to get to my sensei. Sensei is a creep, talks about the 3 worlds of our universe, something's wrong with the balance of Magic Kingdom or whatever, he goes to fight the evil new guy, flies face first into Juliet's boobs. He tries again, and he lands in her boobs again. Twice in a row. Funny stuff. And now we stumble on this cringe lord, who's performing some ritual and awakens a bunch of demons, which were the bosses I just showed off. This guy right here is so ungodly lame, a literal off-brand Joker. And that's not me trying to be funny, like a, hey, this guy could be a school shooter, am I right thing. No, they even have him say the society line.
This world, this government, this society made my life a hell.
They knew what they were doing, but the problem is, he sucks. The joke of it all is so superficial that once you spot it, 0.4 seconds into the cutscene, you're already waiting for the next part of the joke, but there isn't one. He's just an edgelord Marilyn Manson wannabe, and that's that. After the Lewis boss fight, he makes his second appearance, and we learn his backstory. Yeah, he was bullied and now wants the world to burn. You've gotta be kidding me. Then he literally unalives himself and plasters his headless body into Killabilly. Oh, okay. Shifting gears a bit, after the disco video gamey level, Nick has a request for Juliet, which is to leave him and go on alone. He doesn't want to hold her back, but he also rebuffs her admission of love and says this.
I love you.
No, you don't. You just think it looks cool to have a boyfriend who's a decapitated head. What about what I want?
He says it's a risk he's willing to take, that he doesn't want to live like this, but Juliet takes him anyway, against his wishes, and she says she's doing it out of love. In the next level, he's upset with Juliet, and I like this character development a lot, but there's one problem with its execution. While Nick is scripted to say mopey lines and act depressed and annoyed with Juliet, he still compliments her when in Sparkle Time or when using Nick tickets.
This is asinine, Juliet. I don't need to be... I'm loving it!
Sweet!
Be here.
You're my moral support, Nick.
Just a tonal mismatch. They probably should have special coded this level in particular to not have him say his usual stuff here. He goes from saying this...
You took away my choice, Juliet. You're making me no better than those zombies.
...to reacting like this when I get the Nick shake.
Awesome!
A missed opportunity if you ask me. Since we're already talking about special coding, maybe don't have Nick say, that zombie looked at your butt in the area where you fight chickens.
That zombie just looked at your butt. I saw it.
The back and forth with Nick and Juliet is funny enough, but kind of worthless when you hear it for the first time in the chicken fight. Jeez, the farm level has so many audio issues and just plain sucks. Did you know you shoot fucking rocks in that level? Yep, rocks. Anyway, back to the story. The creepy dead sensei calls at one point, says her and Nick are the only hope, and blah blah blah. After the Killabilly fight, Juliet's dad crashes into Killabilly and explodes, presumably dying. Sensei says to hop in the hole, it's the only way, so they do, and now the plan is finally unveiled. Swan's headless body...
How?
By detonating a Nick bomb.
Juliet has to take Killabilly down with a Nick bomb. So, sad times, Nick accepts his fate, says Juliet was right to bring him along, this is what his purpose was, and saves the day. Then, outer space heaven shenanigans, you're going back to Earth, but there was a mix-up. Remember to have Juliet do cartwheels with teddy bear underwear. Creepy old pervert trope is great. And Nick's head ends up on the sensei's body. Now he's a short king, and they live happily ever after. The bad ending, they return home and their mom is a zombie. The good ending, their mom made Juliet a birthday cake. Alright, whatever. The story never had to be remarkable or anything. You kinda need some type of long-term goal to give the main character a reason to start doing stuff. But even still, I was both impressed and let down by it. Impressed at the character dynamics with Nick and Juliet near the end. I didn't foresee Nick being anything other than a goofy sidekick that says wacky lines now and then. Him having such a real and profound moment, even if it kinda paints Juliet in a worse light, was a welcome subversion. However, Swan being a baby's first Joker is pretty lame, especially given that he's so surface level and forgettable. Again, you gotta have some type of goal to drive the characters forward, so him being a paper-thin footnote of a big bad isn't the end of the world, but it still feels pretty lackluster. Overall, I was genuinely caught off guard with Lollipop Chainsaw. I really wasn't sure what to expect. I hadn't done literally any research into the game before playing it. I've only known of the box art picture and the main character being a chainsaw cheerleader chick. I bought it haphazardly at a high price at some game store when I saw it, and decided now was the time. I kept picturing a Dead Rising knockoff, but no, like other Suda51 projects, it's a relatively simple action game with a heavy-handed gimmick. The pacing switch-ups, the gameplay of slaying zombies with your cheerleading chainsaw moveset, the humor with the dialogue, save for some exceptions of course, and the presentation with the visuals and some of the songs on the soundtrack. It was great, well worth the amount of time I spent with it. I'm not sure I'd recommend paying the price I paid for the game, close to $80 I think, but hey, the remake remaster should be coming out in a year or so, and it honestly sounds awful. No licensed soundtrack, nor Suda51 or James Gunn on board. Why even bother at that point? That said, the licensed nature of the soundtrack is a reason it's not so easily accessible to buy these days, so maybe that's not a horrible thing to remove. Fuck, video game preservation is so stupid. Thanks for stopping in, friends. Thank goodness for a shorter video. See, it can be done. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me with real money. Happy October, and I hope to see you again maybe soon.
Big Chungus.